Well, the South Alabama Jaguars had a pretty disappointing 2023 after winning the conference in 2022 and coming back returning a whole bunch of production last season. They were expected to make another run at a conference title, and it just didn't play out that way last season. Now they're going to be dealing with a lot of roster changes as well as a new head coach. Kane Womack is gone. The offensive coordinator, Major Applewhite, has been uplifted now to be that head coach. How will the South Alabama Jaguars fare in 2024, and can they be a conference contender this season? Well, you're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you to prediction season. We have under 30 of these left. If you're a fan of a Power 4 team, you already have a video on my channel, and I just want to thank you guys so much for watching this video and for supporting me during prediction season. It really has meant a lot to me, and if you want to continue to help support the channel, please go back and watch my other videos, or if you're as big of a college football nerd as me and you want to hear what I have to say during the season, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when videos get uploaded. We're going to be uploading a ton of videos here during the college football season, but you can support the channel in many more ways. Really just interact with it in any way you can. Like, comment, share, and really anything else, again, watching, subscribing, just interact with the channel any way you can. Does help support me if you would like to do so. Let's talk about the Jaguars of South Alabama and their new head coach, Major Applewhite, here in 2024. We'll take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and at the end of the video, we'll go ahead and dive on into the South Alabama football schedule, and we'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. There are a couple more things, though, before we do start, because right over here will be the stats the team put up, either offensively or defensively last season, and of course, for your viewing pleasure, right down there below the team's logo, friends, I have put the team's coaching staff. Let's waste no more time. Let's start talking about the South Alabama offense that had a ton of really good talent on it last season. Now, a lot of their leaders offensively, in fact, their lead quarterback, their leading rusher, and their leading wide receiver from a year ago are all gone. And we'll talk about each one of those players when they get there, and obviously you see a ton of losses in that offensive line room as well. But let's start out with the quarterback position. It is the most important position on the field, and they lose a good one to the NFL. That is Carter Bradley, who will no longer be the quarterback of the Jaguars. Obviously, you could definitely see him play on Sundays. 2,660 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions on around 68% completion percentage last season. He is now with the Las Vegas Raiders. He had a phenomenal season back in 2022. That definitely, compared to 2022, had a subpar 2023, but was still a very good quarterback, and deservedly so. He is now with the Las Vegas Raiders there in the NFL. You also will be losing Desmond Trotter, who threw 41 passes for 351 yards, over 70% completion percentage, 70.7, 5 touchdowns, 2 picks. He has run out of eligibility and graduated. So what does that leave your quarterback room with? Well, there is a freshman entering this room who is not listed here, probably going to end up being that third string, but you get 2 returners to this cornerback room. Your starter, probably going to end up being Gio Lopez. He did throw passes last season, 61 of them to be exact, completed 67.2% of them. That's 41 out of 60 for all you math nerds. Reverse. Yeah. Oh, okay. 475 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions for Lopez last season. He also had 154 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground and averaged 8.6 yards per carry. And with rushers with at least 10 yards per carry last season, that led the team. So you're getting a pretty solid dual threat quarterback. Again, Carter Bradley, never a guy that was going to get outside of the pocket and run. If Gio Lopez can be a pretty solid passer here and use that dual threat ability to the best of his ability, well, then we're definitely going to see this South Alabama offense be a pretty good force here, and I think they're going to have some solid quarterback play from Gio Lopez this year. As good as Carter Bradley, tough to say. You could say probably not, but Gio Lopez, I think, will be a solid starting quarterback and a good option for this offense here in 2024. What are the weapons he has around him? Well, you will no longer have LaDamian Webb. As I said, the leading rusher from last year's team is gone. 1,007 yards and 186 carries, 5.4 yards per carry for all you math nerds. There we go. I did it right that time. 16 touchdowns on the ground last season. You also do lose a depth piece. He had 53 carries for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. Graduated is Marco Lee Jr. Didn't have a rush of more than 13 yards last season, but nonetheless, a good depth piece that does leave due to no more eligibility left for him. So your running back room looks like such. Kentrell Bullock and Braylon McReynolds are going to be battling it out for that 1-2 there. 83 carries for Bullock, 46 carries for McReynolds last year. Yeah, on the R-Lads depth chart, Braylon McReynolds is listed as that starter on day 1. I think you're going to see the 2 guys split carries this season. Bullock did have 4 touchdowns last year. McReynolds had none. Again, your second and third leading rushers off of last year's team. you'll see him battle it out. And then PJ Martin is going to be a depth piece. And you do get a guy who I'm really very curious to see where he slots in here. It's Iverson Celestine. He's a transfer coming over from Tulane, and I'm really curious to see where he fits in this major Applewhite and Rob Azell, if I'm saying that offensive coordinator's last name correctly, offensive system. Wide receiver room, not many notable losses, but you do lose a massive one when Colin Lacey transfers over to Louisville. Listen to this stat line: 91 catches, 1,316 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Again, for all you math nerds, 14.5 yards per catch for Colin Lacey last season, and he's going to be a phenomenal player now with the Louisville Cardinals. Even with his departure, though, I think this is the wide receiver room that still has a lot of very good talent on it. Jamal Pritchett had almost 900 yards receiving last year, 883 and 8 touchdowns last season. You get guys like Javon Ivory and Devin Voisin coming back, who are very, very good weapons. And then the guys you have kind of sitting back in this room in the second or third string are going to be good as well. A couple of those listed here: Jeremiah Webb and Shamar Sandgren. You could list some other names as well. And I have put a transfer out there as well. Tylen Campbell is entering this team through the transfer portal. And I just think that you got yourself a pretty solid wide receiver room here. It could prove to be one of the best in the Sun Belt Conference. Ivory and Voisin, I think, are going to play really well this year. Pritchett, you could end up leading this team. But I really think all three of those candidates could push for 700, 800, maybe even Pritchett could push for 1,000 yards receiving this season. And the receiving talent doesn't stop there. Yes, you lose Lincoln Seffick to the NFL. Really good tight end for you last year, but your leading receivers among tight ends was DJ Thomas Jones, and he comes back, as well as Todd Justice and Andrew Benz as a transfer, I believe, coming over from Bowling Green. Yes, that is correct. He is into this program as well. Now, the offensive line room, you do lose a ton of talent here. 2 guys gone to graduation. That was Josh McCulloch and Reggie Smith. Dante Lucas, James Robinson, and Adrian Strickland are all gone through the transfer portal. So what do you have coming back on this offensive line? Well, Jordan Davis, Reed Buys, Kenton Jerido. I will fact check that name. Well, I had the feeling something might be wrong, and nope, nothing is wrong. So yes, Kenton Jerido's back, Malachi Carney, and Reed Gavin all return to this offensive line unit. 4 out of those 5 guys will probably end up seeing starting role time. And this guy, Malachi Preciado, apologies if I said that last name wrong, is a transfer who is coming in from the Purdue Boilermakers, who should be a starter here on this offensive line. According to ourlads.com, right now projected to fit into that center position. You do get Seth Russo, Ethan Hubbard, and one more transfer in Jaden Hobson in through the transfer portal as well. So overall, let's talk about this offense. Taking a step back in 2024 kind of seems like almost a certainty. And it's not to dog on any of the offensive talent here, but you lose Carter Bradley, you lose LaDamian Webb, you lose Colin Lacey, you lose Lincoln Seffick. A ton of production is gone off of an offensive line that helped the run game be as successful as it was last year. And granted, it could have got a little bit better in pass protection. It allowed 31 sacks last season, and so that's a place you want to look to improve this season. Carter Bradley's a good quarterback. You lose some good weapons, but I still like a lot of the talent that's here, especially this wide receiver and pass catching room as a whole. I really, really like. I think the running back room is going to find success. Gio Lopez, maybe he doesn't fill the entirety of what Carter Bradley was able to provide to this offense, but he gives you a new ability with his legs, something that Carter Bradley wasn't able to give. I think this is still going to be a really solid offense here for the Jaguars this season. And now we go ahead and take a look at the Jaguar defense, because last season it was really, really good. The rush defense, really good. Pass defense, under 200 yards per game. And overall, just you could consider to be one of the better defenses in the Sun Belt Conference. Statistically, that proves it. The eye test, it definitely proves it. Well, you do lose a lot of good talent off of last year's defense. We'll start out with the defensive line, as we usually do, and you lose a couple pretty vital pieces here off the defensive front, including your leading tackler among defensive linemen last season. That was Jamie Sheriff, 45 tackles, 3 sacks for him last season. Was tied for second with, I think, 2 or 3 other guys here on this team. Jamal Hickbottom had half a sack, 27 tackles. He is gone, as well as Brock Higdon, who will be leaving this defensive line room as well. He also was one of the guys that had 3 sacks last season. All of them no more eligibility and have graduated. So what does that leave the defensive line room with here? Well, Wykevius Thomas is still back, 38 tackles and 1 sack for him last season. Carlos Johnson Jr. will also be coming back, 16 tackles, half a sack for him. Maurice Strong Jr. and Jordan Norman, as well as a couple other names that you could list returning to this defensive front. But I had to include the transfer in here, Jalen Durgan. I'll fact check that spelling. Man, sometimes I got to be more trusting on myself. Nothing wrong with that spelling there. Jalen Durgan is coming in through the transfer portal. I'll tell you where he comes from here in just a second. He's over from a community college, an East Mississippi Community College. So could play some big minutes here on this defensive front, according to ourlads.com. Is projected to be a starter on day one for the Jaguar defense. Linebacker room, Trey Kaiser is gone to the NFL, and what a linebacker, just what a defensive player he was for this team last season. 67 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 pass defended. You'll see him playing on Sundays. Khalil Jacobs is going to be gone here. He is off through the transfer portal. Really good player last season, the top 5 tackler, 56 tackles. He was the third guy with 3 sacks last season. Did have an interception as well, so he'll be missing his production, as well as a ton of guys that are off here through the transfer portal. And sorry, not the transfer portal. I meant to say graduation. Just talked about how Khalil Jacobs leaves to the portal. No, these 3 guys have all run out of eligibility and graduated, including your leading tackler from last year in Quentin Wilfong. 84 tackles, led the team with 6.5 sacks. You'll be missing his production a lot this season. James Miller and Keyshawn Brown will also be gone due to graduation. So you talk about this linebacker room and who comes back. Well, it's going to be a lot of guys that played some depth roles last year, needing to take a step up, needing to play a bigger role than what they did last season. Dalton Hughes is back, though. Blaine Myrick, Gavin Forsha, Amari Sibley, and Christelle Caldwell. Apologies if I mispronounced that first name correctly. You do get a guy coming in from the portal. Akil Washington is in here to this program. Again, tell you where he comes from in a second. He's over from Liberty, and you got still, I think, some solid pieces in this linebacker room. I mean, getting Dalton Hughes back, I think, is a really important piece here. Yes, he only had 10 tackles last year, but with all the talent you lose, Dalton Hughes is going to be somewhat of a constant here in this linebacker room. Getting Washington in, I think you're still going to have some solid pieces, but again, it's needing to see how some of the guys that were sitting back in this room last year take a step up and play well this season. Only 2 losses out of the defensive, no, sorry, 3 losses out of the defensive back room, but they are very, very notable ones. Marquise Robinson is off through the transfer portal out of the cornerback room. 35 tackles, 3 pass defended, led the team, no, second on the team, my apologies, with 3 interceptions last season. You do lose Yam Banks, one of your better defensive backs out of the safety room. He's off through the portal. 45 tackles, a sack, 3 pass defended, and a pick. And Jalen Jordan is gone due to graduation. Jalen Jordan last season, let me go ahead and find a stat line. There it is, 35 tackles, 2 interceptions for him last year. All those guys will not be playing Jaguar football this season. Who will, though? Well, in the cornerback room, you do get Ricky Fletcher coming back. Led the team with 11 passes defended last season. Dallas Campbell and Reggie Neely. And there's a misspelling, so I went ahead and fixed that for you. They all come back, as well as Jordan Scruggs, who is coming in here through the transfer portal. He is over, again, a community college player last season that'll be playing D1 football this upcoming year. And then the safety room, Jaden Voisin, who led the team with 4 interceptions last season, second with 6 passes defended and a top 5 tackler as well. Mike Harris, Wesley Miller, and Christopher Wallace Jr., while Lardarius Webb does come in through the transfer portal. And you are getting him over from, I'll find it right here, Oklahoma State. He's going to be a very vital part to what this defense is going to do, especially in this pass defensive realm. And hey, kickers are people too. You know, I like to show them some love. Diego Guajardo is gone due to graduation out of the kicking room. So you do dive into the portal and get Laith Marjan, I believe, who comes over, yes, from East Carolina. And Jack Martin is back to do the punting duties for this team. Overall, this defense, do I see it taking a step back in ways? Yes. I don't think the rush defense is going to be as good as it was last year just because of all you lost on the defensive line and in that linebacker room. The linebacker room could definitely be a weak point on this defense this season, but like I said, I still think you got a lot of good solid pieces there. Defensive front still has some really good pieces. This defensive back room, yes, they lost 3 phenomenal defensive backs, but getting Jaden Voisin back is huge. Getting Ricky Fletcher back is huge. The 2 transfers they brought in, I think, are going to play really, really well and probably will end up seeing starting minutes for them this season. I don't know. I think this defense is still going to wind up being pretty solid here and a force to be reckoned with for sure, as South Alabama looks to push for a bowl game for the 2nd straight season, and they will do so when they have to battle this schedule. Hey, any game at home is going to be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics, or of course that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Jaguars are going to end up winning fairly easily, while any game in yellow is going to be a close competitive game, but I still see the Jaguars being able to win, and of course any game in red is a loss. They start out out with two very interesting non-conference games, and I think no matter the way you slice it, I do think they split these two non-conference games. Now, the first one is against the North Texas Mean Green, and this team is having a roster overhaul in a ton of different positions. You're getting Chandler Morris in at quarterback, and the entire quarterback room is going to be revamped for you this season. Chandler Morris, of course, a former Power 4 starter. He probably will get the starting nod this year. All new wide receivers. Your defensive back room is completely overhauled, and I think it's going to take time for some of these transfers to set in. Now, North Texas is still going to be a feisty team. They're going to be very talented this year, and I think the transfers are settling well, but game one against the team that still has some solid returning production, and yes, granted, sees their transfers in here and there, needs some guys to play bigger roles. You've heard me talk about all of that in this video. I like Gio Lopez, and I like South Alabama to be able to take this pass game and really challenge what these North Texas defensive backs are going to look like this season. This is going to be a close one. It's going to be a dogfight, but I think the Jaguars are going to pull away with the win. They get the home field advantage as well, and a win for the Jaguars to kick off 2024. But I said they were going to split it. I think they lose this game to the Ohio Bobcats. And look, when you talk about this Bobcat team in 2024, all things considered, they're still going to be a really good team. Well, what do I mean by all things considered? Well, your starting quarterback is gone, your top two leading rushers, a ton of really good wide receivers, some really good defensive pieces. You just lose a whole, not to mention your top tight end is gone to play for one of the best teams in the country this season in Will Merrick. There are just a ton of really talented players leaving this Ohio roster, but there's going to be enough here. There's going to be enough transfers to get this job done. And I think South Alabama struggles. They go on the road and lose. However, they should be able to win a Thursday game against Northwestern State. Again, this should just be able to be a pretty solid win for them here, and then they can move on to their first game in conference play when they take on the Appalachian State Mountaineers. Now, App State did take a big loss through the portal when they did lose Nate Noel. However, you return a lot of top wide receivers from last year. Caden Robinson, Christian Horner are both back. Their quarterback and Joey Aguilar is back. You still get Kanye Roberts back, who's going to be a really good running back for this team. Defense returns a lot of really solid pieces and bulks up on transfers, especially in that defensive back room. Miles Farmer, Seth Robertson, Avarian Cole. This is going to be a really talented App State team this year on a Thursday on the road in Boone. I don't see the Jaguars getting this one done, and I definitely don't think they will beat the LSU Tigers. Garrett Nussmeier has been with this program forever. He has waited for his turn, and he is going to get it. And even though LSU lost a ton of talent from last season, including a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback in Jaden Daniels, I think they're still going to be one of the best overall teams in the SEC this season, and that is a loss on the road for the South Alabama Jaguars. And the struggles in the first half continue for me because I do think they lose to the Arkansas State Red Wolves. Now, don't sleep on Butch Jones's program. This is going to be a really feisty team, will the Red Wolves be here in 2024, because when you take a look at it, look, Jalen Rayner coming back, I think is going to be a stud at quarterback. You go back at his stat line and what he did as a true freshman last season. Now with a full season under his belt, things are going to get better for him, and he's only going to improve. He's got a ton of weapons around him. The leading rusher comes back, a ton of really good wide receiver pieces. The defense loaded up on transfers, especially in that defensive front seven, and especially, again, on that defensive front. Arkansas State, I think, is going to be one of those teams in the Sun Belt you got to watch out for this year, and the Red Wolves beat the Jaguars there at home, meaning a road loss there for the Jaguars. And how about that? 3 straight road games, and I think you really do struggle in those. Hey, after your first bye week, though, you get rewarded with 3 straight home games, and I think you win all of them here. Now, it's not going to come without your struggles, because I do think you are going to struggle a little bit against the Troy Trojans. Why? Well, yes, they did lose John Sumrall. You're no longer going to have your starting quarterback. Kamani Vidal is gone off that team. Some really good defensive pieces leave. And overall, just the system and the philosophy and everything that John Sumrall was able to put in place there now is going to get switched out for Gerard Parker. So a defensive-minded guy for an offensive-minded guy, of course, as Gerard Parker was a former offensive coordinator. But look, Troy's still going to be a pretty solid team this year. I mean, Damian Taylor's not a bad running back. Goose Crowder, I think, is going to play good at quarterback. Still got some good wide receiver pieces coming back. The defense got some really good transfers coming in, as well as some good returning pieces from last season, even amongst all the talent that they did lose. This is still going to be a good Troy Trojans team. I just think South Alabama's going to have the edge here in this one, and then they should be able to beat ULM. By the way, that game against Troy, I believe, is on a Tuesday, and then you're going to get that game there against ULM on a Saturday. You get it at home. Probably the worst team in this conference. I don't think they have much going for them this season, and South Alabama should be able to pick up that win. Now, Georgia Southern, I do think this one is going to be another tricky win, kind of like that Troy game there as well. Georgia Southern and Clay Helton squad still going to be pretty good this season. Dexter Williams is in to play quarterback. You got some good transfers coming in on the offensive front. Not Tom, Tyler Fromm coming in here to play tight end for this team through the portal. You return Derwin Burgess, Josh Dallas, some really good wide receiver pieces. Jalen White is back at running back, some really good defensive pieces, especially in that defensive front seven. They're going to be a tricky team to face, but I think Gio Lopez and Major Applewhite and this team are going to be able to get it done because Georgia Southern has some things to improve on defense, and I just think this is a South Alabama offense, especially when you consider what they could be able to do in the pass game with as talented of a wide receiver room as they have. I think they definitely can take it to teams that may very well have their defensive weak points in their secondary. Georgia Southern may very well be one of those teams, and I think South Alabama gets the win there. But then you do have some pretty interesting games to close out the season. After your second bye week, road game against the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, I do think you lose that one. Louisiana is a team this year, much like Arkansas State, that you got to watch out for because this is a team that could be on the rise this season. Chandler Fields is back. A ton of offensive weapons are back. And yes, they use the transfer portal here and there, but they got a ton of returning production and a ton of really good returning talent that I think will just be better than what South Alabama has this season. You get a road game against Southern Miss, and I'm just not liking the Golden Eagles a lot this season. They lose Frank Gore Jr. They lose some other really good pieces off a team that already wasn't that great last season. No real shot to me to see. While yes, I think they see their improvements in some ways, I don't think it improves a whole ton, at least record-wise for them this season. And then Texas State. You want to talk about teams I am high on? I am high, right and high on the Texas State Bobcats. That offense was amazing last year. It's going to get even better this year. The defense is going to take a step in the right direction. That's one of the top contenders in the Sun Belt Conference for me here in 2024, leading the Jaguars to go 6-6 this upcoming season, which I do not think is a bad record considering anything at all. Major Applewhite's first season as a head coach. You lose a ton of talent off of last year. I think there are enough pieces here to get into a bowl game. The schedule is manageable. You are in the weaker division in the Sun Belt Conference, and that's what helps make your schedule more manageable. I don't know. I still think this Jaguar team has some good things in them this year, and I got to going back bowling in 2024. But I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. We'll talk about the Central Michigan Chippewas in my next video. Goodbye.